all today. I'm so excited to hear about the secret experience where we're going to be playing Ruby Warrior and everybody can compete and play those programming games. But I'm also really excited about the talks in the program. Marco Roth's keynote was fantastic. His work on the developer experience for particularly HTML and ERB has been incredible. And I can't help but stand here and think that SF Ruby is about the future of Ruby. And gathered here today are some of the finest minds in Ruby's developer experience and that are working on pushing it forward. So if SF Ruby is about the future of Ruby, why are we talking about programming games? So programming games are about novel and playful developer experiences. They push the boundaries of what's possible. I want to inspire you to review your own developer experience for improvements, but I also want to provide a new source of inspiration for those who are pushing forward improvements to the ecosystem in general. Any one of you could develop the next innovation that pushes Ruby forward. We're going to dissect these novel and playful developer experiences and describe how to apply it to your current Ruby setup. I hope this inspires you to go beyond my suggestions and start thinking about how to build a better experience for yourself and for others inspired by programming games. But maybe we should start with a definition? Some of you may not have played a programming game before. So a programming game is any game where creating or modifying programs is a core mechanic. And they can look very different. So for example, this one is Battlesnake. It's a multiplayer snake game where you host a server and they send you the board state and you reply with the move you'd like your snake to make. And under 500 milliseconds or your snake just trucks along in the direction it was going. This one is Exapunks. It's rad. So you are infected by a disease that is slowly turning your organic parts into machine parts. And AI is giving you these nonsensical hacking tasks in exchange for medicine to slow the progression of your disease. So you're writing programs for exas, which are tiny robots that can spawn more exas. Your documentation is a hacking zine. And you need to program your new machine parts to work like the old ones did. So this red GIF is you reprogramming your hand. This last one is the most beautiful, atmospheric, story-driven programming game I've ever seen. It is my favorite, and that's not because I'm in it. I'm in it because I loved the demo and I got involved, not the other way around. So you're playing as Frank, who is a disillusioned and heartbroken indie game dev who is following in the footsteps of Jumbo, a heartbroken and disillusioned indie game dev. You're exploring Frank's memories and the spaghetti code of his indie game to understand the history of what happened and improve his game demo and find out also why it failed. So this one mostly involves setting and copying variables and getting really creative with their usage. It's got heavy puzzle game vibes, and you get to walk in this one, which is very, very rare in a programming game. Next, let's talk about what makes them fun. I think that there are a lot of things, but I want to focus on 5 things today. We're going to talk about immediate feedback, color, documentation, purpose, and autonomy. For each topic, we're going to explore examples from the games, and then we're going to talk about how to apply it to your day job with concrete tips and examples. Our first topic is going to be immediate and visible feedback that you can get from games. So this is a scene from One Dreamer. We walk up to the standee. It's blocking our path. We interact with it. Now let's open it up and edit it. We're going to go in here, make some modifications. We save, and the code is hot reloaded. This big glitch effect indicates to you that you're operating on the new code. There was a summary of changes that displayed in the bottom left, and the way it reloads means that you're immediately interacting with the new code. This is a beautiful developer experience that drives you to explore and interact with the world. Let's review. All of the behavior is co-located so you can access it all in one place. The code is accessible within the context that you are interacting with. You are in the game world, you are moving around, and you can open it immediately. There's a clear summary of changes so that you understand what changes you've made, and there's an obvious indicator that the changes have happened so you understand you're interacting with the new code. The hot reloading is absolutely vital here to making this a playful and interactive experience. Short feedback cycles result in curious, playful experiments with code. Next, let's talk a little bit more about debugging in Exapunks. So this is what code execution in Exapunks looks like. These little exas are traversing a network that is attached to 3 tape decks and copying a file back to the host. At all moments, you are aware of what line you're on. every single register value, which file your EXA is holding and what value it's accessing within it. And if you look at the tape decks in the Digicam feed, you can actually see that the correct tape deck starts spinning when you are accessing that file. And now let's take a look at those buttons. You have finite control over the execution of your program. You've got restart, pause, play, run one step, and fast forward which is the real-time speed. This is before we even talk about how your code is going to be run past 100 tests so that you have those immediate regressions. This is a dream developer experience that's got immediate feedback and unparalleled visibility into the execution of your program. We even have a visual representation of what your code is doing through that large section with the X's in it. Let's review. You can see this real-life impact. You've got a visual representation of your code. You've got debugging buttons to control execution, and it's obvious what your current line file access and register value is. You've got a lot of test cases to give you a really clear regression, and so you can understand what's happening. Debugging should give you clear visibility into execution. Now, let's get into how do we apply this to your job. These first two are going to be about building that better debugging experience, which gives you faster feedback. First off, a great way to get better and more immediate feedback is test-driven development. I don't expect you to build 100 tests like Exapunks, but I can tell you that TDD is one of the most satisfying ways to code. It gives you clear feedback, easy to manipulate arguments, immediate regressions, and you don't have to write tests at the end. Once you've got your tests, you've got an established, repeatable context to use for debugging. Let's start talking about binding.erb. So this actually comes with Ruby. You don't need to add it like you do with pry or bybug. The first command that you see when you open it up, so binding.irb, once you put it anywhere and you run your test, it'll open up an interactive Ruby console where you can call methods and variables and modify your state. The first thing that it's going to show you is where you are in the code. So this is very similar to what we saw in Exapunks, where it was telling us which line we were on. Local variables gives you a list of all the local variables defined at that location. Instance variables is all of the variables that are available on the instance. You can see everything that's been defined for a controller, whether it came from application controller, an action, a gem, or the method. This is similar to being able to see what the values are for all of your registers. Show source in a method name will give you the source of any method and pull it into the context you're currently in. IRB show commands gives you a ridiculously long list of methods that are exactly like this, like the ones that I've got listed here. And then ls is about as close to the Exapunks experience as you're going to get. You can see every method that's defined within that context and its source. You can see every variable from local to global, and it's honestly an overwhelming amount of information on the controller. Next, let's talk about that feedback. Let's talk about live reloading. So when I work on my Jekyll blog, I'll put my code and my live reloading site side by side so I get immediate feedback and visibility every single time I save. It gives a really similar feel to what we saw in OneDreamer with immediate feedback on code changes. So let's do a demo of that. I've got my site here, and I'm going to add sfruby to the list. I'm going to start by adding my date, and then I'm going to go in here. I'm going to add my content. We're actually like halfway through the gift here. But my point is that we're going to go in here, we're going to add our date, we're going to have AI come in and generate the rest for us. Come on. Generate the rest for us. We're going to save it, and then we're going to see it show up on the other side. So I can see my changes in context. And I can look at them and say that that is not actually what my talk is about at all. Go back, fix it, save it, and I can immediately see my changes without having to reload or refresh the page. Then I'm going to, go over there, click the link in 404s. Timing's not perfect on that one. The point here is that live reloading gives you a feel for what your changes look like in context. Now, when I gave this talk at XORuby, that's where the conversation ended because I knew about live reloading in Jekyll, but I recently discovered something new. And this time I discovered it live on stream so you all can experience
I'm going to call this
the joy of live reloading.
Ooh, interesting. Oh my God. Okay. What did that? What just did that? What just did that? That was magical. I want that in all of my projects. I just modified the ARIA label, saved it, and it updated.
with no refreshing.
Marco says this is Vite.
Okay. So that was the first time I ever discovered Vite, which is not how I pronounced it in the video because I didn't know that that's how you actually pronounced it then. But the point is that live reloading is this magical experience. The next thing that I want to talk about is contextual information. So Marco showed us reaction view. This allows you to know which partial you're accessing without leaving the application and without opening the inspector. This is what contextual information is about. This is why we enjoy it. This is why we love reaction view, is because you can look at it and you can see the information that you need to do your debugging in context. And this is very similar to the experience that we saw in OneDreamer, where you're able to open up the code from the place that you're in. But this doesn't just apply to the front end. This also applies in the back end. So if you're looking at a query and you need to optimize it, Active Record will show you the SQL that it will run, and it'll run the explain or analyze for you so you don't have to open up a connection to the database. Contextual information is really about having the information you need to solve your problems in the context that you're in. Now, some of you might be sitting there saying, like, do I really need this? And the answer is, no, you don't. We wrote HTML and ERB before reaction view. You know, you don't need these things. You can go around it. But joyful developer experiences are about reducing friction. It's about having a more enjoyable experience. And these are 4 different ways that you can do that and get faster feedback. Okay, now that we've talked about getting immediate feedback, let's move on to our next topic, which is color. I got a really interesting comment after I gave a lightning talk version of this at RailsConf, which is that I didn't know programming games could be so bright and colorful. And I think that that's obvious just from the screenshots. They've got these bright, bold, beautiful colors, and that's part of what makes for a joyful developer experience. So let's talk about how do we apply this to your job. Now, I'm hoping your first thought is the same as mine, editor themes. So we love editor themes. This is mine, by the way. It's the #1 question on my Twitch stream, which is, what is your editor theme? This is Horizon by July. And if you haven't noticed, my slides and my editor theme match. Go ahead and take a look at those first 3, the purple, the cyan, and the pink, because you can bring in bold, beautiful colors to your developer experience. There are multiple ways to bring in color. And are there any other ways to bring those colors in? And of course, the answer is yes, you can put them in the application itself. Like on my website, Meet Another Day, which also uses my editor theme. All right, so on a more serious note, you can use color to bring a lot of clarity to your CLIs. So let's talk about that next. How do we add color, or how do we use color in our CLIs? And I'm going to say CLI because it's short, but I want you to think about rake tasks, I want you to think about logs, I want you to think about scripts, and I want you to think about any terminal output. Color can really add clarity. This is a really tiny font, and most of you can't read it, but RSpec is a great example of this because probably even in the back row, you can tell that I have some passing specs, I have some pending specs, and I have at least 1 failure. You can even see the difference between the original error message and the stack trace, and you can see it at a glance. I'm going to take a really quick moment to note that they use more than color to indicate it because they're colorblind users and terminals without color, but the color really helps those who can see it. Next, we're going to look at a comparison of 2 different outputs. So these are both get statuses, but on the left is an example of a get status run within an interactive ad, and on the right, we have a get status like a regular get status. I know there's additional info on the left, but I want you to look at how much color helps and how easy it is to see whether something was added or not. And I want to go back to something we saw earlier. I want to look at this analyze, and I want you to take a minute to think about how color could improve the readability of this output. And I want you to think about this as you're working on tools, as you're working on gems, even as you're working on rake task output. And I want you to look for these opportunities. Okay, so hopefully at this point I have convinced you of the power of color, and you're asking, like, how do I add color to my CLI or any other terminal output? And I have an answer for you. So this script is all you need to add color to your output. So on the left, we have ANSI color codes, and on the right, You have a reset option and an example of this in Ruby. So these ANSI color codes are actually supported in your terminal. So you can use it in Ruby, you can use it in bash, .files, doesn't matter. It's your terminal that understands these. There's no gems, there's nothing complicated. This script is all you need to add color to your CLIs. Now, these 6 colors on the left are these 8 colors on the left are very, very special, because if you use these colors, your output will match your editor theme. It's a callback. Okay. I hope you add some bright, bold, beautiful colors to your developer experience, and these are different ways that you could do that. Next, let's talk about documentation. So documentation has a reputation for being dry and joyless. Let's look at how programming games make it fun. So this is the Battlesnake documentation, and there's no question that the color is fun, but I don't mean to be mean when I say this, but to me, Battlesnake represents the historic developer experience that we're used to. There's a big example request, and there's an example response. It's really hard to tell the decision making or how the data mutates. The way that Battlesnake overcomes this is that they build starter projects. So instead of reading through the documentation to understand what's happening, you can actually get to the part where you are experimenting with the code and making changes to it. I think we can do more than this, though. So in OneDreamer, the documentation is visual, it's clear, it's contained within the editor for easy access. You may question the wisdom and separation of concerns involved in setting a lamps-enabled state equal to a radios-enabled state, but OneDreamer has some fun, like spaghetti code aesthetics to it, because it is a rushed indie game demo. Now, hopefully from the intro you were ready for this one. Exapunks is a hacking zine. I can't go into all the details, but it's really fun. So it's got stories, it's got demos, and it's got command documentation. In a zine, you can vary the format to match what you're trying to communicate. You're not stuck trying to communicate everything through RDOC. Now you ready? Let's talk about how we apply this to your job. So first of all, you want to get your documentation in the editor. LSPs have been coming a really long way with this, and thankfully Marco gave us a really good demo of what that looks like. But it isn't just LSPs, it's also using commands like these. So bundle info will show you information about the homepage, the documentation, the changelog of any of the gems that you have installed. And if you think about it, when you call a command and you add a -h, that is about bringing the documentation into your editor and into the context where you are working on it. Next, let's talk about some tutorials. I don't want a giant hash and having to dig through it to understand what I'm trying to do. I think that we should have tutorials that talk about how to accomplish your goals and then extrapolate from there to understand what's happening. Documentation should really guide you in addition to just explaining all of the different options for what you can pass to it. Next, I want to talk about concrete examples. So I've heard people say that you shouldn't include screenshots in your documentation because they'll fall out of date. But to me, those screenshots are what anchors someone in your documentation. Concrete examples without abstraction, without variable names, communicate to us exactly what's happening. Next, let's talk about templates and starter projects like Battlesnakes, and Exapunks also has several of these in the zine. So templates and starter projects kind of talk for themselves because they're complete, they're concrete, and they're functional. And there are a lot of different ways you can do this. So Dragon Ruby actually ships with tutorial games inside the engine so you understand how it works. And we're talking about tutorials and starter projects, but it can also be generators. I think one of the reasons that Rails is so fast and easy is because you can generate a scaffold for what you want to do with a generator. It's a starter or demo of a feature that's built into the framework itself. Last but not least, zines, games, alternate forms of documentation. So this is an example of real-life documentation in the form of a zine. So these are Wizard zines. Julia Evans makes these. So hers are super high quality and deeply researched, and she has a print shop with them. So she focuses on old technology that she knows will last, but you don't have to use them that way. You can get creative with how to share your library framework package, whatever it is. You can like we could be coming to events like these, and we could be swapping zines. If you have a booth, you could have a zine explaining a real-life use case for how your tool works and how it works underneath the hood. We're talking about zines here. One of our cultural touchstones as Rubyists is Wise Point and Guide, and it was full of comics. Wise is a cultural touchstone because it was fun. It was whimsical. It's not the best documentation for Ruby that's out there, but it's engaging, it's enjoyable, and it's fun. And these are all ways that you can make your documentation fun, easier to access, and concrete. Next, I want to talk about purpose. So in games, there's always a larger purpose or story that you're taking part in. So the story of One Dreamer is one where you're drawn through all of these tasks and puzzles because you want to understand and explore what happened to Frank. And at the end, you want to help him save his demo and his game. There's a greater purpose behind your actions. In Exapunks, if you recall from the beginning, you are slowly being turned into a machine. You have to hack your heart into working again at one point. Survival is a pretty good purpose. It's certainly the one that brings us to our day jobs in one way or another. But the purpose I actually want to talk about in Exapunks is curiosity. You're trying to understand what the AI is, why it's asking you to do these hacks and what it's doing. Curiosity pulls you through this story. So let's talk about how to apply this to your job. So you can talk to customers, product owners, and really understand how your work is impacting people and how it will make their lives easier. You can do meaningful work. I always feel really good about contributing to Ruby for Good and thinking about all of the impact that it has and how it improves people's lives and it makes these nonprofits' work easier. You can learn something new. Sometimes we can't work on something that's interesting and helpful to the world, but you can at least work on something that's new to you. All of these points are really about caring about your work. Because if you don't care, aren't you just working to survive? All right, our last topic is autonomy. So this one is a little bit meta. When we sit down to game, we're not doing it for survival, we're choosing to do it. It's never compelled or forced. The best game that I can think of to represent this is Battlesnake. This is the DX, it's your repo, it's your deployment, it's all you building it, but it's still better than our day jobs. And I think if you've ever done Battlesnake, if you've ever done Advent of Code, if you've ever worked on side projects, you'll understand why. It's more fun when you have a choice. And I think that this applies particularly when we talk about things like side projects and open source. Like part of the reason open source is joyful is because it's an option and because you choose to work on it. And I think that the loss of autonomy can have the opposite effect. So when it comes to open source, I think maintainer burnout can happen when a project starts to become an obligation, when they feel like it's no longer a choice for them to work on it. And I think this also applies when we start talking about AI. I think that some AI resistance comes from obligation and messaging. You have to learn AI to be hireable. You have to use AI in this job. AI is going to replace you. AI is inevitable. Who would be excited by that? That sounds like homework and job loss. I mean, seriously. What if instead we said, here's an interesting and powerful new tool that comes with some problematic ethics and often misfires, but you can take it or leave it. Since we're talking about games, at least give me the illusion of choice. So, how do we apply this to your job? I don't know. 20% time, working open source, freelancing, entrepreneurship. I'm not sure, but if you have any ideas, please let me know. You can find me. I go by Chael or Rachel, she, her pronouns. You can find me at chaelcodes in most places, chael.codes/links, hello@chael.codes for the email. Obviously, I'm on Twitch, Thursdays at 1500 UTC, and I'm looking for work, so come talk to me about that. Thank you all so much for your time and attention.